special sauce that made this script an Oscar-nominated screenplay. I figured it out. Before becoming a full-time writer, I spent more than a decade in the field of psychiatry as a medical provider. And this screenplay resonates with me about mental health. It always bothers me when I watch a film and they get the mental health aspect wrong. And it happens a lot. It's very well-intentioned, but in many cases, it does more harm than good if you don't really know what you're talking about. Schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, rarely depicted accurately, though it does happen. And don't even get me started on dissociative identity disorder, or what people would say is multiple personality disorder. Not at all as it is depicted on the screen. But I believe this is an Oscar-nominated screenplay because of its accurate depiction of personality pathology secondary to trauma. As a reader of this screenplay or a viewer of the film, you don't have to understand textbook psychology to know the characters ring true. And the truth is what makes us fall in love with the story. When it happens, it's magical. It happened for us last year with the film Past Lives, if you'll think back to that one. Benji displays authentic cluster B personality traits. And these are cemented ways of identifying with the self and the world and how we interact with the world based on a history of abuse, neglect, abandonment. They're predictable, they're obvious, they're apparent. Doesn't mean that if you experienced abuse, neglect, or abandonment, you have cluster B traits. But if you have cluster B traits, you most likely experienced abuse, trauma, abandonment. So we don't know what happened to Benji. I can guess, but we have no idea. All we know is what's on the page, and he certainly displays these traits. And let's talk about them. The first is rapidly shifting and intense moods based on circumstance. We see Benji quickly flipping his mood, not based on some overarching neurochemical response, but because of what is happening around him and a deep-seated fear of abandonment. The next is fragmented identity. This is the chameleon effect. Benji has developed a common coping mechanism of being highly skilled at taking on different personas. In other words, he can almost be any person in any setting, and this is how he's able to be so charming and so engaging. This is a valuable interpersonal skill, but often it leads the person down the path of feeling empty, alone, losing touch with the core of who they really are. Here's an example of Benji using this skill when he first meets the tour group.
I'm just interested in people from other places. It's like I'm a fan, basically. Keep going, dude. I'm sorry about that.
No. I'm very happy when people are interested in my country.
Oh, sweet.
What's your name?
Benji.
Benji? I'm an open book.
Ah, rad.
So my mother and I survived the genocide, and I moved to Winnipeg with her life savings sewn into the inside of my jacket.
Jesus, fuck.
And in Winnipeg, I found a connection there with the Jewish community.
Yeah, well, naturally.
Yes, naturally, Benji. And when I learned about the Jewish story...
This is why Benji loves the airport. He gets to experience what he believes is the best version of himself by interacting with strangers and taking on a temporary persona of who he believes they want him to be. So it's like a little game. He gets to shift and be a different person for a few minutes. There are 9 of these traits, but I'm only going to mention 3. Here's the third one, impulsivity. Cluster B traits include broad impulsivity. There's also narrow impulsivity, which is like ADHD, where you're making decisions based on very narrow information because of being hyper-focused. But broad impulsivity is when you're very aware of the consequences of what your actions will have, but you don't care. You're doing it anyway. In the moment, it's all that matters. We see this impulsivity when he coordinates with the group for this irreverent display at the statues. We see it when he sneaks the 2 of them on top of the roof of a random hotel they're not even staying at. We see it when he's playing in the river and everybody has to wait on him to stop playing so they can go on. We see it when he goes off on the tour guide. We see it when he goes off on the people on the train. All very impulsive. Okay, so the point here is that Jesse Eisenberg, he knew what he was doing when he wrote this script. He has given us one of these rare moments when we identify something in literature or film that we know to be true in real life because of our own interactions and experiences, but we don't know that we know it to be true. Does that make sense? It sort of sneaks up on us, but it's so very authentic and true that we're like, yes, it moves us. That is magic.